How's it going, everyone? It's Blake here from ChessPathways.com, and today we're doing another game analysis video for one of our members. This game was sent to me by Brendan, who was actually one of the winners of our Chess Pathways Tournament Challenge, where I encouraged our members to go out there and play in a tournament and analyze their games afterwards. So congratulations, Brendan. I'll be getting in touch with you about claiming your prize shortly, and if anyone out there wants to make sure that they don't miss out on future Chess Pathways challenges, make sure you visit chesspathways.com right now and get signed up. It's totally free, only takes 5 seconds. I'll even send you a free move-by-move guide to chess thinking when you sign up. But okay, let's get to the game. You had the white pieces here, Brendan, and it looks like we start out with a London system here. Bishop f4, e6, e3, and d5. And yeah, you played bishop d3 here, which I haven't seen too often. Most people play either knight to f3 or knight to d2. I think this move is okay, though. It is a normal part of the white setup in the London system. So bishop d3, bishop d6, you played bishop g3. Yeah, I've seen this move be played before, even at some very high-level London system games. You're not really worried about these double pawns, because that would open the h-file for you. So instead, your opponent plays c5. That's a very normal move in the London. You played c3, and now black played c4. And now this is really interesting to me, and this is why these annotations are so important to let me give good feedback to these players sending me these games. But you gave c4 an exclamation point here, saying that it forced you to move this bishop again. But I would disagree that c4 is such a great idea from black. Yes, they do force you to move this bishop again, but black also is moving this pawn again, right? It's not like they're using this extra tempo to get a lead in development. So this extra tempo they gain by attacking your bishop's really not too important. Especially because the center's locked now. It's not going to be so critical, one extra tempo of development. And they've really taken all the pressure off here against your center. So I think this is fine for you, and to me it looks like the main plans here from white are either going to be to play for the e4 pawn break, or possibly to get a kingside attack going after something like f4 and bringing a knight into e5 and just playing on the kingside. And meanwhile, black might try to play on the queen side. That's where they have a space advantage, but I think the game's roughly equal. So okay, queen to e7, knight f3, knight c6, knight to e5. I think that's reasonable. And now after black played knight to d7, you chose to play f4 and really solidify this knight in here in the e5 square. You were kind of critical of this move in your analysis. I actually kind of like it. I think it really solidifies this knight. You have an easy plan here to just play on the king side. You can castle to put a rook on the f-file. This knight has a natural square to come to on f3. If black ever takes this knight, you get to take back with the pawn. And you said that you don't like blocking in your dark-squared bishop, which is true. It's great that you noticed that. But there's another opening called the stone wall, where white plays for the same pawn structure with the bishop on c1 still. And one of the plans from that opening is to play eventually bishop d2, bishop e1, and bishop h4, taking 3 moves to finally activate that bishop. So compared to that plan, you're way ahead here. Your bishop's much better on g3 than it is on c1, and I think white stands better here. Your bishop on g3 is certainly better than the black bishop here on c8. That's a much worse bishop. So in the game, black played g6. I guess they're worried about something like f5 at some point, but this looks pretty weakening too. Their dark squares are getting weaker. So I like knight d2 here. Seems like that's where the knight wants to go. And now your opponent played h5, and I guess they're trying to play h4 or something, but again, this doesn't look right to me for black to play this way. This bishop is so bad, you're just getting developed. You played h4, which I think is okay. It does kind of make this bishop worse, though, because it might want to come to h4 at some point. I know black's trying to kick you away, but this also weakens the king if you want to castle kingside. I think I might have just played knight to f3, which looks like a move that white wants to play anyways. Possibly playing bishop h4 or something next if black lets us. If they play h4, I think that's fine. We can just drop back to f2. And really, I think the black position's really miserable here. They can never really play f6 to kick this knight away because they weakened the g6 pawn with all these moves of the h-pawn. Taking here always looks really risky, and if they don't do that, what are they doing here? They can't really develop this bishop very well. They can't really make sense of their king. Seems really bad for black. But okay, h4 is okay too, I think. And now black, I guess, finally got frustrated and took here on e5. And yeah, I liked your commentary here. I thought it was very insightful. Yeah, f takes e5 looks like the better move to me. You're simply opening an f-file there for your rook, and you're probably going to get a lot of pressure down the f-file now as well. But you were worried about f takes e5 and g5, and then you said after this exchange you weren't sure how to defend everything here. You thought you were simply losing material, and you just missed that you had queen f3 to defend everything. And yeah, this is true. Queen f3, and then you're probably just putting a rook on the f file at some point. White's much better here. All the black pieces, look how restricted they are. But even if you miss this, going back here after f takes e5 and g5, you don't have to play h takes g5. I feel like you kind of made that move in your calculation automatically. g5 doesn't have a threat. You don't have to address this move at all. Here you could simply play knight to f3, for example, and black really doesn't have a great answer here. Taking on h4 just helps your bishop activate itself. Pushing g4 takes all the pressure off of you, and now your knight's great on g5, and you're just going to probably castle next turn and start attacking this f7 pawn. So I just feel like this happens a lot when people are calculating. They see a move like g5 from their opponent, and they automatically start looking at the exchange. Always remember that when your opponent creates pawn tension, there's always 3 ways you can address it. You can maintain the tension and not do anything, you can exchange, or you can push past the pawn. Here you can't, of course, because the h-pawn's in the way. But it's just always good to keep those 3 options in mind when you're calculating. But okay, instead you play d takes e5, which is okay too. I think f takes e5 gives a bigger advantage, but this still looks good for white. Your opponent gets to play knight c5, though. And you were talking here about organizing a breakthrough with e4, which I think is a good plan. I might just castle here, though, if I were you. Queen e2 looks reasonable, though. Your opponent played b5, expanding there on the queen side, and now you play e4. Okay, black played queen to d7. I do think you want to castle, though. You do want to get your king out of the center before it opens up. Here, I'm wondering if we could even castle long. Just maintain the tension here in the center, don't make an exchange right away, and just line up our rook with the queen. To me, that seems like the most natural move, but instead you played bishop f2, which also makes some sense, trying to get this bishop back into action and attacking this knight. Your opponent played d4, which is their best move. And here, again, you don't have to take on d4. I know it looks like d3 is scary, but this knight would also be under attack. You would have time to save your queen. But you did decide to go for a forcing line here. You played c takes d4, knight takes d4, bishop takes d4, queen takes d4, and it's still not too late to salvage this position. You could have played rook b1 here, just defending this pawn, and I think white's actually doing okay there. I think the black pieces are restricted enough that white has a chance to hang around, and I think it's a little unpleasant for white, but I think the position's roughly equal. But you just missed that after castle long, knight d3 can be played. And this is a surprisingly strong move. If you take that knight, black gets to open up the c-file, which could be very dangerous for you. And of course, if you don't take that knight, then f4 is at least hanging, and that's starting to look pretty good for black. Maybe we could consider king b1, but after king b1, knight takes f4, now the e5 pawn is hanging, the queen's under attack. I think this is not very good for white. So in the game, you played bishop takes d3, c takes d3, and yeah, now you made a big tactical blunder, and this is a very common one I see at this rating level. Your queen's under attack, you decide to try to get fancy and counterattack the opponent's queen with knight b3, hoping for, of course, d takes e2 and rook takes d4, and you're fine, but there's just an in-between move here. Black gets to give a check, and now their queen's safe, yours is not, and white's, of course, losing the queen. I think this kind of goes along with the pattern I was discussing earlier in your calculation, where you kind of are too quick to assume exchanges when you're calculating. You play knight b3, and you really just assume that black's going to take the queen, the most obvious move, and then you get to take without looking for alternatives. So just be careful of that thought pattern, and really try to force yourself to consider alternatives to exchanges from both sides when you're calculating, both at the board and also, of course, just on your own when you're practicing tactics, either with an online tactics trainer or books, or whatever you use to practice your calculation. Yeah, of course, after knight b3, the game's over. Queen c4, black wins the queen, and I'll just quickly go through the rest here and see if there's anything else to discuss. Okay, they give the queen back. That seems... Oh, I see, they're making another queen. Yeah, that's a simple finish. Queen, they block, they win a pawn. They finally develop that bishop, and now it's, of course, too late for white to do much, and you resign. So thanks for the game, Brendan. I thought that was really interesting. And this is a theme I'm seeing all the time from a lot of our members, where they completely outplay their opponents positionally. I mean, the opening middle game, that was all great here, but then in a small flurry of tactics, they miscalculate a couple things, and suddenly the whole game turns around in the span of a couple moves, usually around moves 15 to 25. And it was the same kind of story here. So don't get discouraged, keep working on your calculation, make sure you're not assuming those exchanges, make sure you're taking your time in those critical positions, and I look forward to seeing the progress you make from here. Thanks for watching, everyone, and please make sure you click that link down in the description to visit chesspathways.com and get signed up there. It took me way too long to become a chess master, so I'm hoping to help you do it in a fraction of the time. Thanks, and I'll see you there.